Is there anything John Romero can't do? For those of you familiar with the history of PC games, perhaps you ran through this brick dungeon with a shotgun, fighting demons, or looking for that hidden blue key card. Of course, I'd be talking about Doom, and one of the original creators is an indigenous man by the name of John Romero. Called the godfather of first-person shooter games, John Romero has just released an autobiographical masterpiece, DOOMGUY Life in First Person, which I highly recommend. In this video, I interview the man behind the book as one of the collaborators on one of the most iconic video games of all time, Doom. Okay, great. Hey folks, this is Vincent Schilling. I am here as the editor and founder of Native Viewpoint with John Romero. John, we go back a little bit before this with an amazing story. And one time I was writing an article for the Smithsonian about indigenous gamers, and I was like, oh gosh, I just have to have his voice. And you agreed to meet with me on a Zoom call at like 3 a.m. and I was just like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this guy is epic. And it just made my article shoot through the moon as far as I was considered. So that
wow, thanks.
That was my biggest article wins, I think, in my career. So
that's cool.
So
that's really cool.
We're here to talk about DOOMGUY, but let me tell you who John Romero is in a very quick snippet. Is that this guy is the co-creator of an incredible body of work that defined, in my point of view, as well as millions of other people's point of view, that defined and set precedents for the gaming industry, specifically the PC gaming industry, by creating Doom, Wolfenstein 3D, Commander Keen. My gosh, what did you not do to set a precedent for gaming, and not just gaming, but making that transition from flat screen to 3D to going in. And, when I found out you were indigenous years ago, my mind just, So here we are to talk about, your story. And in your book, which I have read, DOOMGUY Life in First Person. So, wow, what an incredible, incredible project. How do you feel? Because now you're at finally it's getting ready to go out there stage. I mean, it's a lot to get there.
It is. It's super exciting to finally see the book, be available to everybody, and the audiobook too, which I narrated. It's just very exciting because there's been a lot of positive response to the book.
Yeah, I can tell you, it is a phenomenal book. I absolutely loved it. I mean, I literally, not to try and say something that gets said all the time, but I literally could not put it down. And when I did, I was already thinking of the next time to go read it. It is the best autobiography I have ever read, and I just absolutely love it. And you and I are only a few months apart in age, so a lot of the references I get, I remember seeing Pac-Man for the first time and just going, oh my God, what the heck is this? Just just the things you talk about. But one thing I really want to mention is, that's super exciting for me, is that you are an indigenous man. You're Mexican, Yaqui and Cherokee, am I right?
Yes.
Okay, yes. And, I was talking to a buddy of mine who Lauren Anthony, and we were talking about you, and he was saying, yeah, man, we were talking to him, and we love his music. He said really great things. And my buddy Dan says hi. I had to throw that in for my best buddy Dan because he's a super fan as well. So to be an indigenous man and come up with what you've done is an incredible showing. How's that feel as an indigenous man to have such a presence in the world of gaming? I mean, you are known to millions and millions of people.
It's great. I think that it's funny because it's like, well, why couldn't I? Like, why wouldn't somebody be able to? You know, and also just want to thank you for highlighting Indigenous voices. It's very important to get people on your program that can make a difference in somebody else's life by showing them what's possible. And that's, you know, part of the reason why the book was written with the kind of information that's in it is to show people who may be in similar situations growing up like I was, that, you know, you can change your environment and you can change and you can go somewhere, you know. And as a kid, I did not know any Indigenous creators, especially on computers, because when I started on computers, no one had one at home, you know, at all.
Right.
You know, especially coming from the place where I came from.
Right. You talk about in your book, like, you know, you talked about, you know, having a paper route. And I remember like getting up at 4 a.m, your hands are black from pulling the papers and kind of catching it. And I was also at the same time having to go after the month is over to collect the money. And that was fun. You know, one time my bike exploded and I had to skate with big papers. I got attacked by a Doberman. Just all this stuff.
It's funny. Being the same age, basically, you were like reading your life almost, right?
I was in so many ways. I was, except for I don't understand code like you do. You know, I'm a writer and a storyteller in that sense. But we're so many Indigenous people really are storytellers, and again, you are just tell this incredible story. I really implore you, if you're thinking about the possibility of getting this book, I'm just singing your praises, because I'm going to be completely honest with you. I was like, wow, the type was really small. Boy, this is going to take. And then I was sucked in, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. This has like 1,000 bookmarks on it, and, you know, lines and notes. Wow. And I love this book.
Wow, that's really great. Thank you.
I just love it. You know, you said something too. I want to also mention that's very wild. And I say this in a loving way, when you talk about, you know, your father passing away. And right when I'm reading this, my father had just passed away in September.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, it's crushing, because it's like Superman. You know, your father, you never see your life without your father. I didn't. And John, I found an envelope with my name on it with the stuff I had done. And I was
wow.
Yeah, I was like, and there's a reference in the book similar to this, folks, when you read it. But I was like, I have so many connections to your story and the way you're talking about this for what happened as well, that it's just my heart. I'm not kidding you. I was reading your book. There are many times the way you tell your story, I was literally, I mean, my hairs were standing up because I'm feeling the excitement of you at certain moments and then crying at other moments, you know, from some of the crushing blows you have. And I was just like, this is just, you know, I just loved it so much, John. I just loved it so much. It is such a gift. This book was a gift to me, as well as it will be to people who read this, you know. You know, I'm not trying to be overly, I just can't help it. It was just so wonderful. I just really just loved it.
I don't even know how you could have higher praise than that, you know.
Get the book, folks. Get it.
Connecting with people through words like that, you know, like that's just so important. And it is the native oral tradition. Yeah. You know, it's written down in this in this case, but to share the same stories and know that people go through similar hardships, and still turn out to be, you know, something, you know, and that's one of the things I really like about the stories. I think that there's going to be a lot of kids out there that can read it and go like, that's me, you know, I think the same way, or I want to do the same things, and this is all I have to do. Yeah. It's right here. Here's a blueprint, you know. Yeah. It's not magic, and it's not unrelatable. You know, it's like, it's if someone comes from millions, that might be unrelatable to a lot of people, where it's like, well, I don't know how you get to where you're going. But you know, I think that there's a lot of similarity in my story and a lot of other people's stories.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's, I thought it was important to put all of the hardship in there because the relatability will help somebody, I hope.
Yeah, I think it really will. And it's so funny. I'm just sitting here as you're talking. I'm looking at you on my screen, and then I'm looking at my camera. So I've been doing media for 20 plus years, and sometimes I still don't know which one to look at. But you know what's funny is, what's fun is the way you're telling your story. Now, it's very, for those of you who are not 100% familiar with John Romero's climb and quest and what he was doing, he's talks a lot about coding and the importance of coding, things like BASIC and all this technical jargon that has to do with computers. But I got to tell you, the way you crafted this and told the story is masterful, because I felt drawn in and included, even if I didn't understand what you were talking about. I never felt excluded. Like sometimes you're in a conversation with someone who's talking about a lot of technical stuff, and you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, buddy. Well, I'll wait until you're finished with this. I never felt excluded. And you really did an excellent job in that sense, because I don't know code. I don't. And you talked about having this mental condition for perfect recall. What's it called again? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Hyperthymesia. Yeah.
Okay, what is it again?
Hyperthymesia.
Hyperthymesia, which means you what?
Perfect autobiographical recall.
Wow.
Or superior,
So a year from now, would you be able to recall this conversation in a lot of ways, type of thing?
Probably, because I could just get on the internet and
rewatch it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, this will be on YouTube. This will be on my YouTube channel, of course.
Nice.
And then the things you talk about that really stuck out to me was your mother remarrying and having a stepfather who was very, tough, and some of that upraising, and going to Disneyland and the exciting things about that. Because I grew up literally on Compton Boulevard, and we went to Disneyland many times, and I remember just loving that place. So I wonder if you and I ever went the same day one time.
I know, that'd be funny. We took our kids to Disneyland when we were living in California. Mm-hmm. Before we moved to Ireland. We took our kids to Disneyland. One year it was every month. We drove 8 hours down to Disneyland from where we were at and took them, and they didn't even know they were going most of the time.
That's awesome.
But like they have grown up with a really strong memory of Disneyland and fun and like that's what life is about.
Yeah, I remember when being on Matterhorn and hearing when like the new Star Wars ride was coming and they were building it, and the guy that used to shoot at the hippopotamuses, and then they had to change some of that ride because the jungle ride used to be kind of not exactly.
It was not PC.
Really respectful.
Yes, it wasn't.
Did that change? So yes, so you refer to yourself, you talked about referring to yourself as John Romero, the ace programmer, which I loved. And then, of course, one of the biggest aspects of your story is the part of the story where you speak about, your fellow cohorts in creation of, Doom and Wolfenstein 3D and Commander Keen. And that was John Carmack, Tom Hall, Adrian Carmack, and yourself, of course, and of course the other folks that you talked about. And something that I really love that you did is you talk about being your age in your 20s and stuff, and there's been a lot of news about saying oh they hated each other, they threw mud at each other across the street, that type of thing. And you're talking about you're like, look, we were young, we were trying to do these things together. And when you throw that much success at something, it's not easy to interact, and you look back at things and you're like, look, we were young, you don't handle things in certain ways. And you look back and now you talk about the fact that you still have conversations with these guys, and you're like, it's been a heck of a learning experience. And here's where we went. And we went through Doom 2, Wolfenstein, like I said, and then Quake. And Quake was where things kind of got tough because it was hard. It was hard.
Yeah.
You had to code, but manage a business, but this and that. So you really did a nice job of explaining everything. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, looking back so many years.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the thing. I think the thing that people have thought because of just stuff in the press is just like me versus John Carmack, when it really wasn't like that. Like we worked perfectly together. And that's the only way that we could have made those games, especially at the speed that we made them. So we had a really amazing working relationship together, and we were so far ahead tech wise and design wise, and we could push each other that we felt we didn't have any limits. And that's how we acted when we planned what we were going to do. It was like, what do we want to do? We don't ever think about what we can't do. We think about what do we want to do, because we can do it. Right. And it's all a matter of time. Yeah. And you can't work well if you don't have that great match. In Tom Hall, incredible designer. He was also a programmer, an assembly language programmer for years. Like, he totally got it. Right. And Adrian, the same thing. Adrian was an artist his whole life, and then he finally got a computer in front of him, and then everyone got to see what he could do. That's awesome. And the amount of work that Adrian did, and especially in 1991 when we made 13 games, and he had to draw all of the art for those 13 games. That's animations, that's backgrounds, that's static screens, menus, sprites, tiles, you name it. He did all of it by himself. Unbelievable. Like, Adrian really is an unsung hero of id Software. He was incredible. Yeah. But all of us worked so well.
Very well.
Yeah.
You give a lot of good credit, which is wonderful to hear. You say, look, over and over, this was collaborative. All of this was collaborative. We did it all together.
Yeah, it was massively collaborative. Like, if John and I didn't have Tom and Adrian, we couldn't have done it. We really needed to have them at the level that they were at. But they were, we worked so well together. I mean, the amount of games we made in that period of time is insane, right? Like, people don't just don't make that many games that fast. Yeah. But we John and I, obviously had a split there with Quake.
Sure.
But yeah, we were really young. We could have done it differently. We could have totally done it differently.
Working yourself, 20 hours a day, is going to take its toll on anyone. So all this said, in the midst of all of this was going on, there's a favorite moment I have in the book that I'm going to show you with an image, and I want you to explain it.
All right. Easter egg.
Yes. And a lot of people never knew that this was you.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's from a Business Week article, just one of the picture, and then they modified it. That is my head hidden in the level of the very last level of Doom 2. My head was hidden, unbeknownst to me. The artists decided to change a blue dot into my head, and the blue dot was a representation of the entity that you shoot to win the game. Right. And because you were never going to see it, it might as well be a blue dot. Yeah. But of course, people hide secrets in their games, even from the dev team. And so they didn't know that I was going to basically go through every bit of everything in that level to make sure it's perfect. And I needed to test the sound effects I was programming for the final boss's pain. And so, of course, the fastest way is for me to just run over there and shoot the blue dot. And I ran over there through all the walls, and I saw my head instead. And I was like, oh my God, they thought they were going to get away with this. They thought the game was going to go out, and they're going to I'm going to find out that what they did. And it's like, I have no retaliation. But because I found out before the game came out, I decided I'm leaving that in there.
That's awesome.
And I'm going to refer to it because I love another hidden Easter egg that references an Easter egg. So I immediately go into the sound room where Bobby Prince is at, and I tell him I just found an Easter egg that is making fun of me in the game. The artist planted it there, and now I need to put a reference to it that hopefully they won't know. So when they tell me, haha, guess what we did? I go, oh, I already knew, listen to this. And so I recorded to win the game, you must kill me, John Romero.
Right.
And I recorded that. He reversed it and he pitch shifted it down and it sounded really evil. And I stuck it in the level. So when you come through the teleporter into the Icon of Sin final boss room, that head sees the player and then says the sight sound, which is the reversed audio, and it sounds super creepy / evil. And then the game starts, that starts spitting out its cubes. And it was funny. So I got that all working and go home. And the next day we all come into the office. We're all going to start working. American McGee pulls the latest version down. Everyone's testing the boss map. He comes through the teleporter and he goes, oh, crazy reverse sound effect. Let me figure out what it says for real. Like immediately he reverses it and it says, to win the game, you must kill me, John Romero. What does that mean? And then it's like, oh my God, everybody now knows. And so he decided we're keeping those 2 Easter eggs in the game because it's funny. Awesome.
Win the game, you must kill me, John.
We're here talking about John Romero's DOOMGUY Life in First Person, and hey, were they even called Easter eggs back then? Who coined that term?
They were. There was. I think it was called an Easter egg after Warren Robinette put one into Adventure.
Okay.
The 2600 game.
Gotcha.
It was a term I think in the 80s.
Okay, got it. Okay, that was awesome. But that was epic. And like I said, I said hi to my buddy Dan, and I was talking to him about that moment. He was cracking up, and that was an epic moment in Doom history. And this book is filled with snippets of really great parts of that history. The 1993 press release. You put part of that in there, and I get to. Got to read as a journalist. It's exciting. I was like, wow, man, I can't imagine to have received this, and I just look and there's things that you did during this about your technical expertise. We're like, well, wait, I could just adjust this computer and then connect them 2 together. And then you like downloaded it from one to the other using like a soldering gun. I was like, what the heck? That's just amazing, and then of course we got into the local area networks where players could fight against each other and talk about Quake and getting the music from 9 Inch Nails in there, and then just really talking about some really, really epic stuff, having a Ferris wheel and at some of the events and I mean, it's just incredible. How do you feel now that this book came out? Because you really get to look at all the stuff that you've done in your career. How does it feel now looking back, in Ireland? You had talked about having this big house at one point and going, my gosh, am I allowed to live here?
Yeah.
I'm just curious what it feels like to be John Romero, to have gone through this incredible history.
Well, thanks a lot for saying that. It's been really great. I'm just super grateful to have worked on all these games, to have been a part of, teams that have made something that really touched a lot of people and drove the industry forward into new dimensions, literally. I think 1996 was the year everything became 3D. It was really obvious, that year at E3 that everything was 3D at that point. It was just amazing. Yeah. But it has been really, really great to basically be able to talk to people that were very excited about stuff that I've done and to talk to them about those things and to give them information they might not have known, or tips for how to do it themselves and how to change their career, or how to even start an indie team, and all of those things, and the importance of indies. It's great to be able to be able to tell people information that you think that they'll actually listen to and do something with.
Right. Recently, I was playing Dead Island 2. This 3D stuff, and it's a very gory game, my gosh. But I saw how far we've come, and it made me think of the engines and the gaming engines and the things you're talking about. And I was just like, gosh, man, this reminds me of the conversations people were having about people going down the elevator in Doom and having shooting the fireballs and going, I have never seen anything like this in my life. My God, and it's just how far we've come, because you push that envelope. The world may not even been ready for it yet, but too bad. It was going to get it, and it was just incredible,
Yep. That was, it's funny because I told, I remember it was today, because we get people writing messages about Doomguy and like what they want to hear and what they want to read about in the book. Mm-hmm. And someone basically wrote a description of like what it was like for them when they first saw Doom when they were a kid. And our kids were in the room here. And I said, it's funny. I don't think you guys know, but like you're so used to playing games that you don't know what games were really like before Doom. Mm-hmm. And like they were mostly static screen games. You're like Pac-Man. You're like looking at a single screen, and if the screen moved, it was really slow. Mm-hmm. And 3D was not even a thing that most people even saw. So when Doom came out, it was like another planet. It was like no one had ever seen anything that looked that way or moved that way or play, that kind of experience never existed anywhere on any console or anything. And so it was just like, you guys have no idea what the world is like without action, like fast action.
Mm-hmm. It was funny. They didn't have asteroids or Big Doug or the old Atari system where, I'm not kidding you, I had a piece of film with blue at the top and green at the bottom that you put on your TV screen because it was black and white TV.
Wow. Yeah, Asteroids Deluxe or whatever.
Oh my gosh.
That's
yes.
funny.
It's just the world has come so far. Yeah. And you have such a massive, 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 massive contribution to that,
Wow, thanks.
And it's incredible.
One of the things about id Software that really did help define the era was the fact that we focused on speed, and that speed was important to conveying the power of the machine that you're using and the kind of experience that you can expect in the game. Yeah. And to me, like for my whole career, speed was always so important to try to achieve because it was very hard to do. You needed to be a really good programmer to make things go fast on the computer, especially the older computers. The older it was, the harder it was to make it go fast. And the reason, like one of the reasons why id Software's focus was so like speed oriented was from my programming hero, Nasser Jabeli, who back in 1981 wrote 9 games for Serious Software, which was at that point the #1 game company. Right. And it was his programming techniques and the way that he wrote his code that made his games super fast on a platform that had no hardware support. Wow. He was doing stuff that like nobody could do, and everyone was looking at what his game's going, how does he even do this? Mm-hmm. And I was super affected by it, like other programmers of the era. And I was like, I want to be like Nasser. I want to write code that's that fast. Like that's impressive. And so that kind of translated into id Software's DNA, is that like focus on speed, which is why when Wolfenstein was developed, we started removing the things that slowed down the player because speed became the focus of that game because no one had seen a game that fast before. And it needed to stay that fast as the experience was being felt by the player. Yeah,
I remember you talking about that, and I just it's just an exciting process. I'm so grateful to talk to you. I appreciate it so much. There's some really cool moments in this book. Depositing a massive check at the bank through the tube and
Hilarious.
talking about, a lot of people don't realize that when the Farmville craze was happening, you're like, let me go ahead and make a game called Ravenwood Fair with 25 million monthly players.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, what did you think about that part?
This stuff,
Yeah, like it's funny because I've been in a location at a museum actually where my wife was showing one of her games at a museum, and a woman brought her son there, and they were both fans of she was a fan of Ravenwood Fair and he was a fan of Doom and Quake, and so I could answer questions about both of those games right there.
Wow.
But Ravenwood really was played by so many people, and
25 million players a month. That's bonkers.
It is
bonkers.
It's totally bonkers. And I have people, it got shut down, as all Facebook games do.
Because they shut all the notifications.
They always shut everything down. And people were really extremely sad. 10 years later, they were still sad that the game was shut down, and they're just begging for me to remake the game. And it's just, the game was designed specifically for those types of casual players to be a comfort zone game.
Yeah.
They felt super comfortable when they were playing it, and they want to recreate that feeling again. But yeah, it's all about design. It's all about the audience and what they should feel, and it's the opposite of Doom. Ravenwood was the opposite of fear and surprise and excitement and all that.
It's awesome. Well, all right. Well, you really have just done so much, and there's just so much in this book that is exciting and fun, and you bring us along for the ride, and you talk about, coming back after all this and saying, let's make some more Doom levels. And that gets slammed by the press like, wow, yeah, blah, blah. John Romero's at it again. And I saw you the other day on Twitch playing one of the most popular, Doom mods, that haunted house.
My house.
So many cool, because you have fans in so many different areas and arenas, like from developers to modders to people who just love your stuff and games and things like that. And, it's just a great book. And, you really change the world in so many ways, along with, John, Tom, Adrian, and all the other folks who are in there, and, id software, ID software. It's just cool to have read through it as a native dude going, wow, we're out there making some waves, and it was just great to see, John. I just want to say thank you for all of that. And the very last question is, you and I, we were born in 1967, so there's younger kids out there who are just maybe finding out about this stuff now, and they think, wow, I want to be a developer, and the world's changed as far as that, or they want to get into this type of stuff. What is your advice to this incoming generation? Because that's what we do as Indigenous people, right?
Yeah. So the advice is, I think it's super positive. There are so many game jobs in gaming, and each game has so many different kinds of work needed to create it, from narration to audio to environmental art, level design, game design, 20 different kinds of specialized programming, marketing, sales, there's business, there's law, there's like so much that has to do with games. And whatever, if you feel like, maybe gaming is something you might want to get into, think of what you would be interested in doing. And, everything that you need to know to get in the industry is on the internet, and it's free. It's online. Mm-hmm. So start to learn a little bit about making games or whatever it is that you're interested in doing. And if it is game development, find somebody else who is maybe knows a little bit more than you, or is even at the same level, or you learn together, and you can put together a little team and try to make really small stuff. Don't ever try to make anything big at the very beginning. Make very small things and see how that goes. And if it turns out that you don't really take to the kind of work that you chose, choose a different thing and start at the beginning again, and kind of take these journeys and figure out what it is that you think you're really going to like in the industry, and just start learning more about it and start doing it. Like, I think, especially young Native kids, I think we have unique stories to tell. I think we also have an understanding of the environment as characters that goes back to our ancestors. But it's a very unique perspective that we have as natives, and the industry is hungry for those perspectives.
Absolutely.
And there are communities of native game devs out there as well that you can connect with and form these indie teams with, and start making some stuff, start making some games.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I just want to say, John Romero, thank you so much for your time, brother. I really, really appreciate everything you do.
Well, thank you very much.
Awesome.
Thank you very, 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 very much. I'm really happy that you like the book. Just like I can't, there's no way that you can get better praise than what you've said.
Oh, gosh, thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks, folks. Appreciate it.